The Season 1 cinematic for the new League season just dropped, and it's all about 4 Demacia. And whether you know absolutely nothing about lore, or you're someone who gets deep into every little detail, this video is for you. I'm gonna cover and explain everything you see. So without any more waiting, let's get into it. I heard a lot of people saying that the first shot in the clip is a reference to the Shadow of the Colossus, with that hooded figure on a horse running through the woods. Apparently, people think this is a nod to Wander carrying Mono's body on his horse to the Forbidden Lands. Now, honestly, a hooded person on a horse in a forest doesn't scream something super specific to me, but since a bunch of folks pointed out a ton of similarities, the production team probably did some reference in there. Then we see Garen looking stylish, farming aura while training Demacian army aspirants, and you already know what that means. If someone was rocking a Helmet Bro skin, they're guaranteed to get effed. If you don't know, Helmet Bro is a community meme about a guy who always dies in the cinematic scenes, and his outfit is basically classic Demacian knight armor. Next, we see the altar of the Veiled Lady, who is worshipped in Demacia along with the Winged Protector, which refers to Morgana and Kael. In Runeterra, we have Targon, the tallest mountain in the world, and supposedly impossible to climb, not just because it's tall, but because of crazy dangers like dragons, beasts, and all sorts of monsters. If you actually make it to the top, you're chosen by one of the celestial entities called aspects to be a vessel, because the aspects themselves can't come to Runeterra in their actual form, so they need representatives with their power. Mahira, who is Kael and Morgana's mom, climbed the mountain while she was pregnant, and became the aspect of justice, and a portion of her powers seeped into the twins while they were still in the womb. Morgana represents a more compassionate, moderate approach to justice, while Kael represents a harsher, more extreme type of justice. When they came to Demacia, both were praised for a long time, but eventually the sisters clashed, and Morgana left. Over the years, she got largely erased from Demacian history, and the people just recognized Kael as the Winged Protector, and Morgana got a skin that shows how Demacians came to envision her over time. After that, we see this unnatural darkness spreading, blowing out candles and creeping forward. It made me think of Nocturne, and you'll see why later in the video. Then there's this huge dragon attacking a Demacian village. Honestly, there's a lot going on in the cinematic, with different storylines kind of happening at the same time, overlapping each other. To make this easier to break down, I'm gonna cover one part at a time and then move on to the next. After we saw the lights going out, the people in the Demacian village get pulled into the darkness. And seriously, there's no question about it, it's Nocturne. We'll see the darkness forming into these arms grabbing the townspeople and dragging them in. Not to mention, Nocturne was awakened in Demacia after being defeated by Garen and Lux's great-grandfather, as it's revealed in the short story for Demacia. In that case, that ancestor was Fozzen Crownguard, their great-grandfather. And like years later in the more recent timeline, Nocturne wakes up because of a kid's fear and tears, a boy named Luca, who discovers he's a mage and is afraid of what could happen for him being different. For anyone who doesn't know, before the Great Mage Rebellion, Demacia had a huge prejudice against any mage, to the point where they even had an army division made up of mage seekers who hunted and tortured magic users just for having magic. And even if you didn't practice magic, just having magic naturally was enough excuse, unless you were nobility, but that's a topic for another video. So then Nocturne uses the boy as a vessel to recover and grow stronger, plunging the whole village into this paranoid state, not letting them sleep anymore, because they started seeing demonic figures in their dreams, and that felt more and more real. Nocturne is a demon, and in Runeterra lore, demons represent negative concepts. And the more broader the concept, the more powerful the demon. For example, a demon of fear of heights isn't more powerful than the demon of fear itself, which is Fiddlesticks, and Nocturne is the demon of nightmares. A long time ago, there was the greatest war in Runeterra, the Rune Wars, and one of the fighters were shadow mages who invaded people's dreams and killed them there. That made people fear sleep, which is basically what gave rise to Nocturne. In the end, thanks to Lux and the efforts of Garen and the Dauntless Vanguard, the shadow demons are held off long enough for Lux to be able to purge Nocturne from Luca's body with her light magic, and he's forced to retreat. Where to? Who knows? But it looks like he came back and even stronger. And remember that video I made about the new champion musician and how the magic of each wall can repel and drive away demons? I even used the biblical figure David as a base, who plays the lyre and was able to drive away the evils of King Saul, moving his heart and purifying him. Well, Sona basically did that here, even though she's just sitting there playing. Sona, who looks just like Hatsune Miku. You can see a bunch of people crowding around Sona, and judging by the color color of the magic around her, it's not just any ability she does in game, because her W is green and her E is purple, and her ultimate is yellow. But that's more forward facing than anything area wide. Actually, after taking a look, her ult in Wild Rift is pretty similar. In PC League of Legends, even though the color is the same, it's more like a forward beam, while in Wild Rift, it's actually an area like this, though they may have just adapted it for the cinematic. And considering how desperate the people are, it's obvious that the Demacians are ignoring that someone's using magic in public. They just want to save themselves, and screw it if this Hatsune Miku looking person is spitting out light while playing a weird instrument. Maybe after the cinematic something happens similar to Spider-Man 2, where the citizens promise not to report her after being a mage. Only that would save Sona, because the cinematic takes place before the Great Mage Rebellion. But since the timeline is confusing and Riot is doing a bunch of retcons, they might have changed that too. Then it cuts back to the scene of Sona looking at the kid who's looking totally desperate, and Sona's like, hold on, I'm almost hitting the note. This kid isn't anyone important to the lore, and he's not a young Ezreal, he's just some random kid. And before he's taken by the shadows, Sona has this awakening where her magic explodes and purifies everything around her. Cutting today, and Sona staring into the horizon. Don't forget to subscribe, drop a like on the video, and maybe consider becoming a member to get access to a bunch of cool perks. And while you're down there, don't forget to click the link to go to our store. There's a lot of really cool designs available and cool merch, so go check it out. Now about Garen, focusing on him for a bit, this dude is absolutely insane. I'm pretty sure that magic they used on him was Himomancy. At first, I even thought it might be something related to LeBlanc, because it kind of reminded me of those red chains she used in that animation where she's fighting Xin Zhao and Yunara, but that's not the case here. What this leaves me with are two possible groups, the Grey Legion and the Crimson Circle. The Crimson Circle is a cult of Vladimir made up of mages who practice Himomancy. I think it's unlikely to be them because they literally manipulate blood, and the Noxians in the cinematic seem to be using more of a red magic energy than actual blood. So they fit way better with the Grey Legion, which is a group that also uses Himomancy to revive and turn them into zombie-like servants, similar to what happened to Scion. If you look at the lore cards shown on screen, you can see that the magic looks very similar, but the soldiers don't really look like zombies. They seem very much alive and absolutely terrified of Garen. The Noxian lands a spell on Garen underwater and keeps him trapped down there, but Garen manages to break free from the magic without using any magic himself, just pure rage and brute strength. Then there's that insanely cool shot of him jumping out of the water straight at a Noxian. And this is easily the most badass part of the cinematic. Even though I'm not that big of a Garen fan, seeing him pissed off and breaking free from magic using nothing but raw strength with epic music playing while he's absolutely wiping out the Noxians, it's just awesome. He pulls a rune necklace off of one of the enemies he takes down and starts chasing the others, even impaling one of them on a tree by throwing his sword. This guy is built different. But then, at the end, after taking several necklaces, and when he's about to kill the last guy, he hesitates, straight up disrespects him by throwing the necklaces in his face and walks away. Dude, back in the short story for Demacia, Garen executed one of the villagers from Fossbarrow after the man killed his wife and children, seemingly while having a mental breakdown. He was affected by Nocturne's magic and claimed his family were demons. Garen enforced the law and beheaded the guy even with Lux protesting. And then Nocturne manifests his power from the corpse, creating hordes of shadow demons. The guy was actually innocent and only did what he did because he was being influenced. But even at the end of his short story, Garen says he did the right thing because the man killed his family and had to pay for the crime. Because of that, a lot of people are saying that this decision by Garen in the cinematic makes no sense. Here, where they cowardly murdered the soldiers who were under his command and responsibility while training them, he spares the Noxian's life just to farm aura by throwing the necklaces and turning his back. So that doesn't really make sense. That's why I don't think he spared the Noxian out of kindness or mercy. It feels more like a mindset of, you killed my men and left me alive, so I'll leave you here alive too. That guy might even end up being executed in Noxus for abandoning his allies and fleeing the battle. Anyway, in the end, we see Garen standing in front of the graves of his soldiers, marked by their helmets and weapons, ending with Garen staring into the horizon. Then we see a dragon destroying a Demacian village in what looks like an underground location. At first I thought it was the Elder Dragon, since the place looks a lot like where you fight it in Legends of Runeterra cards. But the dragon in the cinematic was way too small and too weak to be the Elder. Then a smaller red dragon shows up to fight it, which is obviously Shyvana. We see Shyvana can't really tank it and ends up needing help, even reverting back to her human form. And yeah, her visuals look amazing. She actually looks like a humanoid dragon hybrid now, not just some girl painted purple purple. Riot absolutely nailed it and deserves props for that. At this point, it's pretty obvious that Shyvana's gonna get a rework. Her new look is already leaked, her abilities leaked, basically everything. But it's still really cool to see her in cinematics, especially since champions don't always look exactly the same in the cinematics as they do in game. Anyway, the dragon turns towards the civilians, but Shyvana tries to draw its attention back to her. She's injured though, so there's not much she can really do until Quinn shows up to save her. They even put Quinn in there, one of the most forgotten, neglected champions out there. But Quinn herself does basically negative damage to the dragon. The one who actually makes an impact is Valor, her bird. In the end, they escape and trap the dragon inside the place they were in by collapsing the entrance. And there's not much else to say about this part. There are no hidden details or anything like that. It's just raw, straight up fighting. The dragon they fight here is not Shyvana's mother, because if it were, she would be red. The fight against her mother is completely different, with a different context and different characters, and it's not something that can be retconned without seriously messing up Shyvana's lore. It involves other characters, her romance with Jarvan IV, and if they change that, it's basically over. It would be the death of her lore. And this part ends with Quinn and Shyvana walking away, both pretty badly hurt. And maybe they're looking at the horizon. It doesn't really look like that, but hey, maybe. And to finish up, that part with the hooded person on the horse in the forest. Eventually, these shadow deer show up chasing her until she ends up falling off her horse, revealing that she is Yunara carrying Xin Zhao's spear tip. Honestly, the first time I saw it, I thought it was looks. I never expected Riot to do something Demacian without her. Since she's now without her horse, Yunara runs and even uses her E to get some movement speed. I just want to say that I still think, and I bet, that those deers are the creations of Nocturne, or beings from the shadow dimension of the spirit plane. Even though some people are saying they're specters from the Shadow Isles, and that even in Sona's scene it would be tormented spirit there, I say no, because a tormented spirit has more of a greenish coloration among other differences. Anyway, before the worst could happen, Yunara is saved by someone I thought was Cythria of Cloudfield, Lady of Clouds, who, for anyone who doesn't know, is a Demacian character associated with the Dauntless Vanguard, and someone people thought might be the new champion in both TFT and League, due to hints left by Riot. But it's not her, it's actually Jarvan IV who appears. When that Demacian figure shows up on a silver-winged mount, it looks just like Cythria of Cloudfield's card art, but Riot totally trolled everyone. A lot of people were theorizing that it wasn't Jarvan IV and was instead his father, Jarvan III, but it's definitely Jarvan IV, still as a prince. Only later during the Great Mage Rebellion will Jarvan III be assassinated and Jarvan IV become king, but that hasn't happened yet in this timeline. Also, Jarvan III's more recent appearance was revealed in the animated comic The Announcement, where we see him in a distorted memory of Xin Zhao because of LeBlanc's influence along with the Trials of Twilight. And in that memory, Jarvan III was acting super arrogant and authoritarian, even though in reality he's actually a pretty decent guy. By the way, Jarvan IV's appearance is looking really sick. He finally has that look that actually fits Demacia in this current version of Runeterra, since the old golden armor design fit more with the aesthetic of old Runeterra, where there was the Institute of War and all that, what the community sometimes calls Runeterra Prime. If you look at most Demacian champions now, excluding Sona, whose aesthetic leans more Ionian because of her homeland, Jarvan IV didn't really have much tying him visually to Demacia before. Then we see Yunara handing over the last memento of her friend, and I expected Jarvan to have a sad face, but he just stands there silently in Mog mode. They might make this into a skin for him, I don't know, maybe, maybe not. Keep in mind that Yunara and Zahen had visuals from the comics showing them in the Devoted Shrine Maiden short story, but none of them got skins from that, even though the designs were really good, especially Zahen. Actually, I think Yunara only got a chibi style version in TFT. And no, it's not Jarvan IV's ASU. They're not giving out 2 ASUs in one season, and especially not for 2 champions in the same lane. And the cinematic ends with Jarvan IV and Yunara looking towards the horizon, and it finally shows what basically all the champions were gazing at the end of their parts, which is Demacia. In this case, it's the capital called Great City of Demacia. And there are also some special curiosities that were revealed to us. The cinematic was the first teaser for the champion update that Shyvana will receive, remembering that it's still coming to this season. The seasonal award is based on the pedestal that was next to Sona. Jarvan IV's outfit while he was flying on the silver-winged mount is meant to remind us of the Victoria skin, and it's the first time that Quinn and Valor appear in a cinematic after 4,695 days since their release. But basically that's it. See you guys in the next video.